Thank you. The first item on our agenda this evening is the Veteran Services Budget. Mr. Davino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have Mr. Callahan with us this evening, Veterans Agent. I sat down the other morning with Mr. Callahan and we went over his budget. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Callahan. I think this is a budget where we really get a bang for our bucks here. They do a great job down there on a relatively short amount of money. And there's a lot that goes on through that office. I'm going to let Mr. Callahan go right through his budget, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the board. I would like to just put a couple of very minor add backs into Mr. Callahan's budget. So, Mr. Callahan.
All right, sir. First of all, the first item is personal services. We don't get involved in that. That's an item that's handled by the finance department. And we go to the second item is purchase of services. First item listing on there is repairs and maintenance. We had requested $200. We cut the $200 because we believe the work can be done. Mrs. Stevens says she can clean the printer herself, and the same with the typewriter, and save a couple $100. We go to postage. We couldn't cut postage. We required the whole $200 for our postage requirements. Training and education, we had $400 listed. The reason for the request was to provide a computer training program for myself and possibly one or two for Mrs. Stevens. And we decided that that was an area we could eliminate. We cut $400 from that. The next item is purchase of supplies. We cut that from $525 to $420, cut $105 out of that. On Veterans Day, this is an area where there are several organizations that provide the services here. The VFW, as an example, provides the wreaths and certain other items on the memorial site. And the contribution I requested was to provide Edith O'Leary some of the refreshments. In past years, I always received the money for that from donations from the Veterans Memorial Committee. And I thought it was kind of unfair because this is a service for the community, and it's always cold on Veterans Day, and a large group of the participants and the assemblage always comes in Mrs. O'Leary's facilities and enjoys the coffee and the donuts and things that we purchase. Now, Mrs. O'Leary provides all the settings on the table, and she doesn't charge us anything for that. But we thought, in all fairness, that we should at least provide the donuts and the coffee. And that's and 2 years ago, I decided it was unfair to be collecting the contributions from the committee to support this endeavor. So this is why we had requested several years ago that this be funded by the town, and that's why we requested $200. And last year we found out we only needed $175. That's all we requested. Anyway, we cut it out because we figured I could go back and get the money from another source. And continuing on down, and travel, we cut only $50 out of travel. My travel requirements are quite extensive. I have to go to a 3-day training program in Milford in September. This is mandated by the Department of Veterans Services in order to be authorized as an agent every year. We have two conferences during the year, which are conducted by the Mass Veterans Services Organization, and we have a winter conference and a summer conference. Those are both 3 days in length, and we also have some other meetings during the year. We have I belong to Northeast Veterans Organization, which is an organization of agents from Middlesex County, Essex County, and part of Suffolk County. We meet 10 times a year in the technical high school in Billerica. That's a charge of $100. And also there are several legislative meetings I attend One is in Marlborough, whereby we go over our legislative program, which we present to the Massachusetts legislature. In this group of Mass Veteran Service Agents Association, we have a legislative committee and we have other committees, but our legislative committee presents our proposed legislation to the Massachusetts legislature in hopes that some of it will be taken up. Now, this one meeting is in Marlborough, and usually a representative of the executive office will come. And last year we had a young lady who is now Lieutenant Governor come, and she spoke to us. Usually it's somebody of that caliber that comes, and in that meeting we have an organization of all the veterans organizations throughout the state who contribute part of their, or make contributions as far as the legislative program. Also, there are other meetings I go to which are unfunded. As an example, we have a legislative luncheon for our representatives and our senators. We have it in the Hall of Flags in Boston, and our organization pays the cost of this, but all of us agents contribute towards it. That's not an item, that's another line item, and there's no charge to the town for that. And also, I testify at one or two hearings a year. I'm going to testify before a hearing at the State House in April to support a license plate for the Distinguished Flying Cross. And I make several visits a year to our state office because we have several cases sometimes that result in complexities or miscommunication, so sometimes a personal visit can ameliorate all the problems that we encounter. Occasionally I go to Hanscom Field if there are any questions of a military nature. I can talk to the various military departments over there. And so that's a rundown on the travel department. We only cut $50 out of that because as it is, the $1,000 doesn't even cover the costs. Under dues and memberships, we cut $70 out of that. And under veterans benefits, we reduced it from $39.5 to $38.5. It's a total of $2,000 we cut as we were directed to do by our town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. I sat with Mr. Callahan for well over an hour, and we spoke. And I want to compliment Mr. Callahan for putting forward such an honest budget to us. What I'm going to ask the board to put back in or to consider is in the training and education line. As you can see, he has zeroed it out. Speaking with Mr. Callahan, he is going to pay out of his own pocket approximately $100 for computer courses that he has to take just to stay up with the new computers and the new systems. And he told me he will do that out of his own pocket. I told him I was going to request that the board put this back in. The second thing that I would like the board to consider putting back in is the $175 for the Veterans Day for the refreshments. I do know a couple of the gentlemen who have donated over the years for that, and I do agree with Mr. Callahan. There's a large number of people there, and it's a fantastic endeavor, and everybody is invited for the coffee and donuts and refreshments. I would like to see that possibly put back in if we could. And on the travel and expense, as you just heard Mr. Callahan say, that the $1,000 is not even going to cover it. And so I asked him, I says, well, Tim, what do you really think could help you out? And what he said was the $50 to be put back in. So that's my third request. That would be a total of $325. And this is basically money that I think will come out of Mr. Callahan's pocket if we don't do this. So that's what I would request, because, you know, as we've said to other department heads, you know, the training that's going to benefit the town, the travel for the town, going into Boston, parking the vehicle, it should not be borne by the employee, I feel. Thank you.
Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Bam.
I guess a question and then a few comments. The bulk of the reduction here is coming from reduced benefit. There was $1,000 in reduced veterans benefits.
That's correct.
And how will those, is that attrition, natural attrition of benefits, or will you
Well,
not
we've
be
been-
giving veterans benefits that they had previously been entitled to?
Well, it's very difficult to program personal need. We never know when people have a need for medical care or whatever. We're sitting there and somebody could walk in the door and all of a sudden we've got a liability on our hands, so we can never forecast it. I think we do a pretty good job in forecasting for the last several years. But to answer your question, in this case, we found out that the reimbursement for Medicare costs for several recipients is no longer going to be paid by the state as of July 1st. So in that case, we could save approximately $150 a month. And that's what occasioned the cut of $1,000. Actually, it's not exactly $150 a month, but it approximates $1,000. So that's where we indicated the reduction in $1,000.
Another question, if I may, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure that I followed what you just said. The reimbursement for Medicare costs is being cut by the state?
No, as part of the public assistance program, 4 or 5 years ago, the state started to see they're required by law to submit a certain budget to administration and finance. So they can't arbitrarily increase the costs of their program, but they can reimburse people for certain costs, like Medicare. For example, we have several recipients who are on Medicare, and out of their Social Security, the Medicare cost of was $54 a year last year, $54 a month. It's taken out of their Social Security budget.
Right.
Well, their Social Security income is part of the budget that we supplement. So the state decided that they would provide the $54 to every recipient.
Okay.
But as of July 1st, they're no longer going to do that. Well, we were just recently advised of that, so we had put in for that reimbursement for $54.
You had to put that into the budget?
We had put it into the budget.
Yeah.
But then the state decided, after we put the budget in, that they're no longer going to reimburse it as a fiscal '04. So that's why we reduced it by $1,000. I don't know if I explained that very well.
Okay. I guess just an overall comment, if I may. I do agree with Mr. Vino that town employees should not have to pay for travel and expense and education out of pocket. Because it seemed like as we went through the budget, some were saying they would do that and some were saying they wouldn't, and I think we should invest in training. And I do respect all the very many years of hard work that Mr. Callahan has given to the town. I do question, and Mr. Younger has brought this up before, that whether we should be part of a consortium where we share the administration of veteran services with other towns to bring down our costs. And in this difficult budget year, maybe this is a time that we need to make that decision. And well, I'm sort of hesitant to keep going back to the benchmark. Our costs are relatively high there, and many of the costs in other towns really look like they're part of a consortium. And I just, ask the board that in this tough time, is that a decision that we need to make?
Is the benchmarking done net of reimbursement? 75% of the benefits expenditure is reimbursed.
That's correct, sir.
So, and that's a key component to this budget.
I'm just looking at the salary.